Good afternoon, friends. This is Vernon Jones, Director of Operations and Strategy with FaithBridge, and we're here on a Sunday afternoon, a beautiful Sunday afternoon in Colorado. Um, the Sunday before the storm, as they tell us, snow is coming. Everybody else is freaking out, but those of us who've been in Colorado all of our lives, we understand that the weather can change moment to moment, not just day to day. So we're not scared of no snow, right? But we're glad that we're here. We're glad that you could be with us today. We're going to be talking something very important today about the 2020 U.S. Census, and we've got some great brilliance on the line with us today. Miss Lee Ann Morning is going to be here with us to talk to us about the census, why it's important for us, some of the things that are going on, and some things that are yet to take place, and all of this good stuff. We want people to be informed, and we want you to make the best steps based on the information that's provided for us. So we're gonna share this video with you. Then we're gonna bring Ms. Morning on to talk to you more about what's going on with the U.S. Census.
Every voice matters. Every post, pledge, and tweet adds to the story, letting your family and friends know what matters. That we can shape the future of education, healthcare, and infrastructure. That when all of our voices come together, one tweet, post, and pledge at a time, we can shape America's future.
All right, so we can shape America's future. That's what this is about. And you say, little old me? Yes, by going through and taking care of your responsibilities to participate in
who should be counted in the 2020 census.
Everyone. You can make a difference. You can make a difference, and you can make great things happen for your community. So I want to bring on my guest today. Our guest, as we talk about the U.S. Census. Leanne, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me.
So before we jump into the census stuff, tell folks a little bit about you, how you got into the census work, and then we'll let you have the stage to talk to us about what's important.
Thank you. So my title this time is Partnership Specialist. This is actually my third time working for the decennial census. We call it decennial because it's every 10 years. So I worked out in 2000 in Colorado, knocking on doors. I was an enumerator and I did a little bit of training and a little bit of what we call cleanup. In 2010, we had two layers, I guess, of the work. So we had what we call the early census, and it was based out of our office over on Hamden and Wadsworth. We tested some of the technology actually that we're using this time. We went up to Wyoming. I was responsible for work down the entire Front Range and the southern half of Wyoming for field operations. And then in the second part of 2010, I ran the Denver Census Office. And this time around, I'm what we call a partnership specialist. So I've been working since January of 2019. And what I've been doing is really this. It's engaging community partners, community leaders, community organizations, meeting with them. Early on, we did a lot of educating and explaining. We have now shifted to really, it's time to do it. It's time to do it now, and it's not too late. So that's kind of the background of how I've been involved and what I'm doing now.
Awesome. And so now we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely disrupted some of the census operations. Can you speak to what has changed since the COVID-19 impact?
Absolutely. So back in March, we were on schedule. We had a schedule. And just to give you a little bit of context, we have layers of operations that happen. So we have operations based out of what we call area census offices. In Colorado, we have 4. So we have a northern office that's up in the Broomfield area. We have a southern office that's based in Colorado Springs. We have an office right at the edge of Denver and Lakewood. And then we have one in the city of Aurora. And so out of those offices, many operations happen. We have our operation where we count those that are experiencing homelessness. We have our operation where we work with populations that maybe have to take advantage of things like soup kitchens and where you get services. We have an operation where we count what we call transitory locations. So things like RV parks or boat marinas. We don't necessarily have marinas in Colorado, but we certainly have our RV parks. We have an operation that's called group quarters, where we work to make sure that we're counting people that might be, for example, like in a hospital setting or in a nursing home setting, where those that are incarcerated are counted. So we have a lot of different layers, all with the same goal, which is count everyone, count every single person in the United States, count them once and count them in the right place. So we had a timeline for those operations. With COVID, we suspended many of those, put everything on hold. There was still a lot of behind the scenes work happening, but a lot of the work that could have or would have been happening either in the offices or in the field had to be postponed. We then came back, and once things started to settle down a little bit for COVID, and as we started to put our safety measures in place, we then started to work within a new timeline. I will say at this point that we are used to working with crisis situations. COVID hasn't happened before, but we certainly have had locations in the United States during the census where there have been hurricanes, where there have been floods, where there have been fires. We've had some of those in Colorado, not all, but we definitely are used to and have had plans always on how do we continue the work. So in this case now, the timeline for the census as it stands today is September 30th is the time where we will stop with self-response. We will also stop on the ground work, and I'll talk a little bit about what that on the ground work looks like in a minute.
Great. Now, before you go into the on the ground work and all that, tell folks, why does this even matter? Some folks are like, I got a lot going on in my life right now, and the last thing I need to do is take a survey. This is more than a survey.
This is, and thank you for the question. You know, I've been buried in this work for so long. Of course, it's second nature for me why it's important, but I forget. I meet people literally every week that say, the census, what is that? And so thank you so much for that question. The census is first of all mandated by the Constitution. We have been conducting the decennial census, so the every 10-year census, since 1790. The purpose is twofold. One is it's around representation. So number of seats in Congress are determined by the population counts.
Wait, let's pause there. People, hear what she just said. Your representation is determined by this count, right? So you literally, as populations have grown since 1790, we both know that, right? So as these populations have grown, I know exactly, like where I live. I'm looking outside my window here off of Piccadilly, and I see houses popping up everywhere, right? So as those numbers have grown, there may be a need for another congressional seat that represents my area. So it's very important that we are participating, because without our participation, we won't have the representation that we deserve. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. And here's what that means in Colorado. So currently in Colorado, we have 7 seats. Every state could gain or lose seats based on what happens with the information from the 2020 census. And so with everything that's been going on, with a lot of the social justice conversations that are happening, people are really looking for ways to have a voice. Wow. And to be able to do something. There's conversations around, voting and making sure registered to vote. This is something that every single person in this country, doesn't matter status, doesn't matter anything. Only it matters that you're living in this country. And our census date was April 1st. So for those in this country, as of April 1st, it is important, and I'm going to say critically important, that your voice be heard and that you be counted.
Well, and I love what you just said, because that's powerful framing. This is an act of social justice, right? This is an act of, folks who are saying, what can I do? How can I transform things? How can I ensure that our voices are heard? This is an act of social justice. And I don't know, I think you may be the first person that has powerfully framed that in all the folks that I've talked to about the census. Like, folks, this is an act of social justice. If you want to say that Black Lives Matter, you want to say that things must be different, if you want to call out people's names who have been victimized by different injustices in our country, take the census, right? It's a great way to ensure that we have the people that we need in Congress. So I mean, that's powerful that this is an act of social justice.
And I want to add to that. I kind of alluded to it. I really want to really take a moment here. This isn't about status. So for those that are not documented or are not citizens today, doesn't matter. The
Right.
citizenship question is not asked. There's only 9 questions on this census, and that's it. So it's very basic information, but it is critical that that again, everyone take this opportunity for their voice to be heard. That's part number 1. But now let me tell you what that also means in addition to representation. There's dollars on the table. Okay, there's dollars at stake. There's nationwide over 675 billion, and I'm saying billion
With a B.
with a B, $billion on the table that will be distributed based on the information from the 2020 census. In Colorado, that's over $13 billion with a B, and that's just for 1 year. Okay. We don't do the census again for 10 years. So whatever we do now, we are basically stuck with those results. So $13 billion plus in the state of Colorado will be distributed based on the information that we gather from the census. And those dollars will impact things that impact all of us. So things like transportation, things like hospitals, where the next hospital will be built, where the next schools will be built, how school districts may be redrawn. For things like, I know under COVID, there were a lot of school districts that did what we call grab and goes. They did meal distributions. Dollars from the information that we gather from the census help to fund those free breakfast and free lunch programs. Things like Pell Grant dollars. So how people are able to access college educations informed by the information from the census. Things like Medicare and Medicaid, things like dollars for HBCUs. Just about any avenue or any facet of public life that we can think of is informed by information from the census, in addition to things like, where does someone open the next business? There's so many in our community that use census information that many of us may not realize. So
right. I appreciate you saying too, you don't have to be documented. You're here. The thing is, you have to be here, right, to be counted. And I think that is very important that message continues to be stressed, because we know that we live in some very hostile times, right? And so I know that there are folks who are probably nervous about this, but I want to reiterate what she said. There is no citizenship question on the census. There are 9 questions. None of them are related to citizenship. All of them are related to, are you here, right? And if you've been and she said the date in Colorado was April 1st, right? So if you've been here since April 1st, we need to know that you're here, because there are resources that are going to need to be here because you're here, right? Yeah. Okay.
That's right. And to add to that, let's talk a little bit about the security, because there's a lot of questions around that. So not only is there no citizenship question, we don't ask for a social security number, we don't ask for bank information, we don't ask for money, and all of those things have happened. Please, everyone, hear me that if someone's asking that information, it's not us. Okay, it is not the 2020 decennial census. What I also want to say is that the information that we gather is confidential. I said earlier that this is my 3rd time with the census. Each time I've taken an oath, and the oath is for life, that I may not access, nor may I share this information. It's a felony for me to do so. And that means that I risk jail time and an extremely large fine if I do that. So even when I was managing the office in Denver in 2010, I couldn't just access information. And what that also means is that we cannot share the information with ICE or with law enforcement or with landlords or with any other part of the government. Okay, this information is gathered, it's compiled, and then it's reported back in statistical format only. The individual information is protected and safeguarded for 72 years. So that's where, people that are doing ancestry and all of that, they're gathering information that was, or they're accessing information that was gathered more than 72 years ago. And that's when this information will be made public.
Wow, 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 wow. All of that is critical to know, right? All of everything you just said. I think the questions that have come into us about the census, all of the anxiety about it, you calm those anxieties because, and I love the fact that you talk about the security piece, right? That um, if they're asking you for personal identifying information like your social security, your bank account, that's not the census. Folks hear that, especially some of our older elders in the community who get preyed upon by so many folks know that that is not the US Census when they are asking for those personal identifying details. That's great to know.
That's correct.
Okay. Now talk to us about what you said, the current operations and all those good things that we should know about how things are going right now.
So I will. Today is September 6th, and we are scheduled, if everything moves as it's scheduled today, we will be finishing the majority of the operation by September 30th. So we are down to about 3 weeks. Here's what's going to happen in that time. So we are continuing to take self-response. So we have a lot of our team on the ground doing what we call MQAs. And really what that is they're setting up locations with tablets. These are sworn census employees who are setting up locations to accept census surveys from those at places that people might typically go. For example, at a grocery store or a place of worship or somewhere where people are gathering in person. We're still, absolutely masked up, gloved up, practicing social distancing, excuse me, but we don't want anyone to be hindered from completing the census because they're saying, well, I don't have access to the internet or I don't have a device or something like that. So we're out in the community continuing to take surveys. Everyone on this call that has not responded can still respond either by phone. That number is 844 excuse me, 468 2020. That's the Spanish line, or 844-330-2020, and that's the line in English. We actually have lines in over 13 languages, English plus 12. If someone goes to 2020census.gov, they can see a phone number where they can access the census in 12 additional languages plus English. Someone can also respond to the census online at 2020census.gov. They just log in, they see it, and they click respond, and it'll take them to the 9 questions. We also have sent out a mailer, so a 7th mailing. This is one of the things that changed because of COVID. So we sent out a paper mailing to households that had not responded to the census at the time of the mailing, and those should be in our community's hands as we speak. So someone can still respond in any of those 3 ways. Also, if someone speaks a language that's not one of those core 12 plus English languages, we have language support in over 50 languages. There's language guides, there's videos, all of that can be accessed at 2020census.gov. And
Wow.
so that's what we call self-response. That's us responding to the census. And that is really the best way where we get the most complete and most accurate information. The other part of that is what the operation that we call NARFU, or non-response follow-up. And what that means is that we have a census team that's now on the ground, knocking on doors for addresses where we have not received a response, trying to gather that information. And so they will have a badge. They'll definitely be identifiable. They'll have a badge with a picture, with a watermark. They'll have their tablet that will have a census information on the back of it. They will also have a census bag. And you can always go to, if you're not sure, who is this at my door, you can certainly check that they have an ID number. The badge has an ID number, and that information can be checked as well, so that, excuse me, so that there's no concerns about who am I sharing my information with and how's that happening. So non-response follow-up, us knocking on doors. will happen through, or is scheduled to happen through the end of September as well. And with everything that's going on, for some people, that's not necessarily comfortable. And so what we're saying, that you may have seen some of the media campaigns that says stop the knock. What we're suggesting that the community do is go ahead and still self-respond to the census. It is not 100% guarantee that we won't come back, because we have quality checks, or we may need to check some information. But the best way to probably most likely make sure that someone doesn't come to your door is to go ahead and self-respond and stop that knock from happening.
It's like when it's voting season and you're getting all those annoying voting calls. You actually vote. It's like, so I love that. Stop the knock. Stop NARFU from knocking on your door. Self-report and do the census. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I mean, clearly. What's the web? Give me the website one more time.
It's 2020census.gov. So very simple. 2020census.gov. And if someone forgets and they just go to census.gov, there's still a link that's going to take them to the 2020 census, and they can respond right there. And really, Vernon, the questions are, someone said to me, Leanne, they asked me more than this, to sign up for Facebook. So it's name, it's sex, it's race and ethnicity, it's date of birth, age. Are you, the primary person here? And then something I do want to take a minute to talk about is that everybody in your household needs to be included on the census for whoever's filling it out. It doesn't matter whether there's a blood relationship. It doesn't matter if you know each other well. College roommates sometimes are in the same household. What matters is that for that address, every person at that address be counted on the census.
Now, I had a question to come in, and that this is, we all love our pets. My kids just convinced me to buy a new puppy. God bless us. Somebody said, well, what do our pets count? And can you explain that to folks? I know we're building lots of dog parks and all of this kind of stuff, but do the dogs count in the census?
Please no, do not count your new puppy on the census. No, this is for every person in the United States. And again, status doesn't matter. And also, we would say to people, identify as you identify. There's been questions around gender and questions around race and ethnicity. Identify as you choose to identify. I also want to take this time to talk about new babies. So we've had one of the largest populations that we missed counting properly in the 2010 census was children under 5. For a variety of reasons. Sometimes kids are back and forth between parents or grandparents or aunties. Sometimes it's communities or cultures don't necessarily recognize their children until they reach whatever that certain age is. If a child was born before April 1st, they should be counted in the census. If they were born last week, they should not be counted in the census. So if someone comes to your door to enumerate you because you haven't self-responded, they're going to ask questions based on who was in the house on April 1st. And even if the baby was 1 year old or 1 day old, they need to be counted in the census based on the April 1st date.
That's good to know. That's a fact I did not know there. So babies need to be counted if they were born prior to April 1st. Correct. If they were born after April 1st, they'll be counted in the next census.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. And think about it. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think that a baby now, 10 years from now, which is when the next census will be, they'll be 10 years old. They will be going into middle school. Decisions will have had to have been made about, is there a school for them? What does healthcare look like for them? And those decisions are going to start to be made now based on how things are allocated, based on the information we get from the census. So it's very much a forward-thinking process. We have to do the work now. We can't afford to sit back, to decide not to participate, to decide, I'm mad or I'm angry or I'm feeling discouraged or whatever, and so I don't want to play. If we do that, we will reap the consequences of those decisions for 10 more years at least.
Look, it's Sunday morning, and so it's Sunday day, and I told that's a sermon right there, right? We gotta understand this is powerful. It's planning the next 10 years of what life is going to look like in our communities. And so often we don't look that far, right? We don't look 10 days, right? But this is really calling us to look 10 years down the line, what needs to be there, what will be there, so that when we get to those moments, we will have everything that we need. And so we need to look at what do our community needs as they're growing. And like I said, as I look outside my back window here, I see that it's going to be a very different community a year from now, right? And over the next 10 years, it's going to be a very different community. It's going to need schools. It's going to need roads. It's going to need healthcare access. It's going to need all the things that you talked about. So very important that as a community, we are thinking not just about the now, but very much about the later.
That's right.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, what are some closing thoughts or additional thoughts that you need to give us today so that everybody's 100% compliant? Do we get a prize if we're the state that gets 100%?
Okay, I'll be happy. I'll clap for us. No prize. No, here's what the prize is: dollars in our community.
That's right.
Because make no mistake, those dollars are going to be spent, but where they're going to be spent and how we're going to be represented is up to us. So yeah, there really is a prize, and we determine if we get it or not. I think my closing comments that I would say is, I think it's great to have conversation. I think it's great to inform and answer questions and educate. But what I'm going to say now is that it's crunch time. It's beyond crunch time, and I'm going to ask us each to do this next thing. If you've already completed the census, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Probably no one will come to your door, and I'm saying probably because we have quality pieces, and we also have other censuses that happen all the time. The American Community Survey is the largest one, and it's happening now, even right in the middle of the census. But that's important, and we appreciate it. What each of us now, however, can do is to reach out to somebody else. And I'm going to say not just one person or two people. How about 10 people? Pick up the phone, send a text. This is not something that I would leave to an email. Everybody is inundated with emails right now. I'm going to ask us to reach out to our pastors, to our neighbors, to our college students, friends, sisters, cousins, relative. I'm going to ask us to dig down into our networks and ask them this question: have you completed the census? And if they say yes, say great, ask them to tell 10 people. And if they say no, don't just say, okay, we'll do it. Say, you know what, here, it takes 10 minutes. Let's do it now. I'll help you. Here's the phone number. Let's dial in together. Here's the website. Do you need help getting on the website? This is the first time that we have done the census as a technology-based project. That's different for some people, and there are still people in this day and age that may not have good access to the internet. So I'm going to ask us to really hand walk some people right through this next piece. It'll only take a minute, but it's something that every single one of us can do, and we can do it today. Don't wait. We can stop the knock and get on, but bring some people with you.
Powerful. I just want to say this has probably been the most powerful telling of why the census matters today. And Leanne, I just want to thank you for giving yourself to this work. This is your third census.
It is.
And I just want to say thank you for giving yourself to our community, to making sure that we are counted, to making sure that we have the representation that we need, the resources that we need, and that we are forward thinking. I mean, this is about the next 10 years. And thank you for being that person who is leading us, guiding us to think that forward. So we really appreciate you today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, God bless you, and have a good afternoon. Okay.
Thank you. You too.
So you guys heard it right there. This is very important. Over the next few days, we're down to crunch time. As she said, we're beyond crunch time. So pastors, neighbors, she said the challenge is 10 people. And I love that. We're talking about the next 10 years. So let everybody get 10 people and make sure that they are counted so that we have the resources and the things that we need within our communities to thrive. I love that. We're looking forward to the next 10 years. It kind of gave me chills a little bit. We've had some new babies born in our family over the last few months, and to think that we are making decisions that are going to impact their future right now. Like we get that as parents, but these things that we're the census is going to determine what schools there. It's going to determine if there's a hospital there. It's going to determine it. All of these things are happening right now. And so we want to encourage you to be forward thinking with us and get the census completed, right? Stop the knock. I love that. Stop the knock. Get the census completed. Thanks for joining us here. FaithBridge is glad to bring these information sessions to you, to bring you great resources from our community to make sure that our community is informed and that we are operating based on good information. So thank you guys for joining us this afternoon. Have a great Sunday. Stop the knock. Get your census done. Have a great day.